Hey everybody, it's Rebecca and Din at Goldfarb and Lou, and we are going to do a short video today on Prop 19. It's going to be a conversation between us so that we can do some Q&A. We've gotten a lot of calls from prospective clients and current clients about this new law and how it affects them. So Din, before we start, do you have any words you want to share?
Happy holidays, everyone. I'm really pleased to be able to talk to you about Prop 19.
Great. So I have a house, and say I want to give it to my kid at some point. Before we talk about Prop 19 and Prop 13, just kind of go back and start from the beginning a little bit. And I want to pass it to my kid. What will happen in terms of my property taxes?
So under the current Prop 13 rules, if you pass it to your child and it's your primary residence, then there's no tax reassessment for property tax purposes. And so if the value of your home increased from the time of purchase to the time of gift, then for primary residence, you don't have to worry about a reassessment. And so your child would be paying the same level of taxes you would. And so Prop 19 changes that a little bit. So, but can we pretend that you also have a secondary home so that we can talk about
a primary home that I want to pass to my kid, and then I have a secondary home as well.
Right.
So oh, go ahead.
So under Prop 13, excuse me, the old law, the secondary property, we look at the assessed value of the property. And so the assessed value of the property is a little bit different than the fair market value of the property. Oftentimes you think, well, what is the worth of my property? The county assessor's office doesn't look at, let's say, what Zillow says or, what Redfin says. Rather, they look at what the price was when you purchased the property, which then becomes the tax basis. And that's what the property taxes are based on. And then every year, Prop 13 limits the increase of that by about 1%. And so let's say you bought the property in 1980. So since 1980 to today's date, your property taxes have risen very slowly over time, 1%, 1%. And so you have to look at your property tax statement, your bill, to see what the assessed value is. And so under Prop 13. So if let's just say you want to give your secondary residence or vacation home or commercial property, right? Then you look at the assessed value and then you say, okay, is my assessed value under $1 million? Because there's an exception under Prop 13 that allows you to give to your kid the secondary property, and the 1 million of assessed value would be protected. And so if it's under $1 million, you would not have any reassessment. But if it's over $1 million, then just what's over $1 million is reassessed. So that's Prop 13. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And I've seen on my bill, it has like the land value and then the improved value, and then it has the total of the assessed value, which is obviously, because I bought it a while ago, way less than what the fair market value is now.
Right, because if you
are concerned with the assessed value when we're figuring
exactly.
Okay,
right.
Right. And so how does Prop 19 now work in terms of these assessed values and passing it on to your kids?
Right. And so you have to distinguish between your primary and your non-primary, right? So that house you live in is what I'm referring as the primary. So let's talk about the secondary property, because that's pretty easy. It eliminates the $1 million exemption entirely. And so if you have a secondary property, that will be reassessed at the time of the gift. And so for the
whether that gift is during life or later,
right,
it's going to be assessed.
Exactly. So before, you can give up to $1 million, right? No reassessment there. But under Prop 19, there's going to be a reassessment of that secondary property. So Let's then shift then to the house you live in, and you want to give it to your kid, right? So what happens under Prop 19 is that there are really two things you have to be concerned about. So again, we look at the assessed value, okay, and you say if it is the assessed value at the time of the gift, if it's under 1 million, then there's no reassessment, but only if your child were then to reside in that residence as well. So let's just say you have a kid who lives in Boston, right? And when you pass the house to the child, that child decides not to move back to LA, it's going to be recessed. So it doesn't really matter, right? But if the child decides to live in the property, they look at the first million and they exempt that. And then anything beyond that will be reassessed. So there's going to be partial reassessment. Again, it's assessed value, not fair market value.
So there's going to be a lot of people moving back to their parents' house um, to avoid this. And for how long they have to live there, who knows, right? But at least they have to claim that they live there and it's their primary residence.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting. Um, and then when does it go into effect? I mean, we're in December now. So when does this law go into effect?
So the law was passed November 6th, during the November 6th, 2020 elections, and it's supposed to go into effect February 16th. And so there's a tiny bit of uncertainty because we have no idea. The assessor's office is really backlogged right now because of COVID, and so um, most planners are wanting the paperwork to be mailed into the assessor's office at probably January 15th of next year.
And still, there's no guarantee because if they're really behind, we don't know what they're going to do with the mail they receive.
Right, right. It's kind
They
of a
stamp
little
it
right, right.
and
It's
when it was
unclear.
received.
Right. If I'm not sure whether they stamp it as received or it has to actually be recorded, and so there's a lot of uncertainty among estate planning attorneys right now. So you really don't have much of a window. We're talking, what are we? Yeah, really a month, and it's there's a lot of work. I mean, it's not it's a complicated issue, right? And so yeah, I mean, it's just
Because
one
when
of
we're doing planning, we're not only looking at the property taxes, we're also
right.
looking at other things. So I know some people are going to have questions and say, well, maybe I should just transfer the property to my kid right now.
Right. And that's a really easy solution. Unfortunately, I think it has also some unintended consequences. I think it's really easy to think, okay, well, let me just give my kid my house, right? Then I avoid Prop 19. So I would probably have you stop and really think about that because, whenever, I don't know, I've said to clients before, whenever I'm doing a plan, there's the five fingers of taxes that I think about, right? Property taxes only being one of them. But one of the major taxes that would be impacted is your capital gains taxes. And let's say if you were to give to your kid, they would retain your basis for capital gains taxes. And think of capital gains tax as the sales tax or the tax on the profit. And so if you were to give your kid and then they end up selling the property, you actually probably pay more in capital gains taxes than you would property taxes. And so it's just an analysis. It's a case by case analysis
And
as
so
to
it really depends, right? Because if I bought the property last year and I gift it now, my capital gains aren't going to be that significantly different. So for
right,
that kind of situation, it might be a good idea to do it now. But then
right.
if I bought the property in 1980,
Mhm.
right, and then I have this huge capital gains because it cost 100,000 then, and now it's 1 million, then that's a different story,
Right. Not to mention the fact that you would be beholden to your kid because now you live in your kid's house. So
right? And so any family dynamic issues
Mhm.
complicate this even further.
Right.
Uh,
Exactly.
so it's definitely messy. I know that we see clients all the time who add their kid or multiple kids to the
Mhm.
deed
Oh
at
my,
the same time, which opens another can of worms. But I assume that's only a partial transfer in a certain sense with regard to Prop 19. It's not going to be a full transfer just because you added your kid to it, because you still
Right.
own it.
Exactly.
So
Right.
it's going to be
Yeah.
messy too.
And again, there are, if you have a complicated family dynamic, if you have children who probably are not too focused on you and taking care of you, um, I would sincerely question that as being a good idea. I know
Or
that seems like, but
yeah, or they're not, they get into a car accident and then the
uh,
personal injury attorney wants to go after the house because you're
mhm,
the kid and your name is on it. And so
right.
that's obviously not what the parent intends.
Mhm. Yeah, there's just a panoply of issues that we have to think through in order to make a plan. And I think, yeah, I just don't see an easy solution without assessing all of the variables. So,
And so what if I have a trust already, and just a little plug for funding your trust, everybody, just because you have a trust and in your trust it says something about your house does not mean your house has actually been retitled into the name of your trust, which is really, really important. So that's just an aside.
yeah.
But let's say I've done it right.
But really quickly, retitling your house means creating a new deed and recording that deed so that the trustees own it in the name of the trust, not in your name individually. And so when you say funding or retitling, make sure you've signed the deed and it was recorded. And if you did it through us, we would have ensured that happened.
Absolutely. So in terms of what if I just have this trust and it's properly funded, and then is that enough to,
Mm.
to deal with Prop 19?
Right. So you've probably heard me say that the trust is a see-through entity. It's a grantor trust, and so for the IRS, it looks through the confines or the box of the trust. So it, for all intents and purposes, the assessor's office is looking at who the trustor is, the person who created the trust, and who the beneficiary is, and so they actually see through the trust. So it does not matter that you have trust. There's no protection. There are types of trusts that I think we could avoid the unintended, the adverse effects, not necessarily unintended, but the adverse effects of Prop 19. But it's a very specific type that we've come up with. But having a normal revocable trust, a living trust, a trust that you can amend, there's no protection from Prop 19.
Got it. So I would need one of these special trusts in
Mhm.
order to sort of have my cake and eat it too, to the best of our ability.
Exactly. But again, it doesn't work for everyone. It's
Right.
just very set specific circumstances that this trust would work for you. So,
Right. So I think that concludes what we were going to talk about today. I don't want to make the video go on for too long, and I hope that you have learned something. And again, if you have any other questions, please reach out to us. I know that we are extraordinarily busy right now, and
mhm.
we are hoping to give our team some time off and take time off ourselves over the holidays. So if there is something that you feel the need to inquire about and you are interested in one of these unique trusts, then please reach out to us right away, because we have very, very limited time to help.
Mhm. And I would say, I think it would be helpful to know kind of what things, I don't know. I mean, that's definitely something that I want to people to think. Like, if you have a home that you bought a long time ago and you have a low property tax basis and you have children you want to give the property to, um, I would definitely give us a call.
And this is only property in California.
Mhm. Right.
If you're
Pro-
outside
yeah.
another state, um, then this is not applicable.
Mhm.
All right, well, good. Well, thank you. And thank you to all of you watching. And we look forward to hearing from you. And if not, have a very safe holiday time.
Take care.
All right, bye.